In this code demonstration, we're going to accomplish something that looks fairly sophisticated, but as we go through the code, we'll discover it's not really all that complicated. It's just using knowledge that you already have and applying it to a particular problem. So you'll notice I have two pictures up on the screen at this point. I have a picture of a man sitting in front of a blue sheet. This picture is actually named Blue Mark. On the right, we have a picture of the moon. And our objective in this function that we're going to call Chromakey is that we're going to merge these two together such that we have Mark without the blue sheet behind him superimposed on top of the image of the moon. And in reality, we're not actually going to put Mark on the moon. We're actually going to put the moon behind Mark. We're going to cover up everything that we see as blue and make that part of the corresponding pixels from the moon. So let's see what that looks like as we look through the code. As always, when we're working with media files, we're starting out with the from import statement to bring in the just4py module so that we have access to these functions. We're defining a function called Chromakey, and we're giving it two input parameters, both of them pictures. Source is the one that is going to be the foreground. It's the picture of Mark in this example. And the background is going to be what we put in the background, in this case, the picture of the moon. Then we're going to loop through all of the pixels in our source picture. So we have four source pixel in get pixels of source. And you'll notice rather than saying pixel here, I actually specified source pixel because later we're going to have to keep track of which pixel from which picture we're talking about. So just to make it a little more obvious, I called it source picture. And then we need the x and y coordinates. So we get the x coordinate for the source picture and the y coordinate from the same. And then we have an if statement. And I'm going to scroll the code a little bit here so that we can see it all. We have built into this retrieving some data. So we've got to get the data and then we make the decision. But we're getting the red component from this source pixel, the pixel that we're working with, and getting the green component. And adding those two numbers together, the red value and the green value, and seeing if that is less than the value of the blue component of this pixel. So if the red plus green values is less than the blue value, this if statement will be true. And if that's the case, we have found one of those blue pixels from the blue sheet. It turns out that this comparison here, for that particular shade of blue, the sum of the red and green is always going to be less than the value of the blue. If we've found a blue pixel of the sheet, then we want to get a pixel from our background at the same coordinates, x and y, that our source pixel is from, and put that into a variable called background pixel. Following that, we're going to get the color of that background pixel. So we're using the getColor function. Again, placing that into a variable for convenience. And then our last statement in this function is simply to set the color of our source pixel to the color of the background. And that's it. We have our two pictures coming in. We loop through all the pixels in our source, our foreground picture, getting the x and y coordinates of each pixel, and then looking at the color value of each pixel to see if it looks like it's blue, because we have the blue sheet as the background. If it is, we get the corresponding pixel from our background picture. We get the color of that background pixel, and then we set our source pixel to the color of the background pixel. So let's run it and see what it actually looks like as the end result. So let's make our source. We will use Blue Mark. Let's make our background picture. And that will be moon. So we have our two pictures captured in variables. Let's do Chromakey now and give it our source picture followed by the background picture. And it's important that we do that in the right order because our program is expecting the source picture first, and then the background. Press enter. It goes through the picture. It has done all the work, and so let's see what it looks like. We'll show the source because that's actually the one that changed. It brought it in off screen. Let me drag it in, and there we go. There's the picture of the moon with Mark sitting in front of it. Notice we still have the wood framing around because the blue sheet was not covering up all of the wood frame. And so that part didn't change, just like Mark didn't change, but anything that it recognized as the blue sheet did. Now you'll notice there's a few lines here where it kind of looks a little odd. There's one here as well. Let me bring back the original picture of Mark, and I think you'll see maybe what was going on there. There's some lines here and right here where the blue sheet had some draping, some creases in it, and so it was a very dark color. It was darker than what it was looking for in terms of the blue, and so it didn't copy those over. But overall, not a bad effect for just a very few lines of code. As you apply this to other situations where you want to do this Chromakey, you might think of it as a green screen, like the special effects they have in movies, or like the weather person on the nightly news. They stand in front of a colored wall and have the maps placed behind them, so to speak. Same idea. Obviously, the special effects in movies and weather forecasts are using high-powered computers to do this on the fly in real time. But even in our rudimentary approach of doing it, it still ran fairly quickly. Not quite quick enough for real-time video production, but it does a very respectable job. As you think about doing this with another picture that has some background color, you'll have to think about how to discover that you're looking at one of, in our case, the blue pixels, as opposed to something else that you don't want to change. Take a look through the code, become familiar with it. If you have questions, reach out to me. We'll see you in class.